Hello and welcome in. I am Greg Smith, Senior Recruiting Analyst here at Inside Nebraska. I am joined once again for our post-practice availability video, if I could talk and intro us, once again by staff writer Steve Marik, also staff writer Geoff Exstrom. We just saw what is one of our last post-practice media availabilities, offensive day today, right? As we had offensive coordinator Mark Whipple, offensive line coach Donovan Raiola, running backs coach Brian Whipple, and a couple of players, right? We had Turner Corcoran, Ramir Johnson, and Va, as I always want to call him.
Yeah, Itiva Malga-Clemens.
Yeah, did he mention that he goes by Va? Did he say
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he mentioned when we were talking with him, he mentioned that they call him Pick Six Va. So
Pick Six
Va.
Excellent. Okay, that might be the best thing I heard all day.
No, he was yeah, he's an incredible interview, by the way. He's just a really fun guy to root for. He hasn't talked to the media here at Nebraska a lot, but Malga-Clemens is a really fun dude to talk to, just a great personality, a really fun guy. So it's just going to be interesting to see him and his backup in the backup inside linebacker position, and he's going to be a really core special teams player. He said he was starting on 3 special teams, so we're going to see a lot of Va this fall. So
yeah, and quick plug, you'll be able to see that entire video from that interview right here on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. And one of the guys that we mentioned that also talked today, Mark Whipple, offensive coordinator. Of course, the subject of quarterbacks came up. He was asked if there was a starting quarterback. You know, this is the time of the year where people are naming starting quarterbacks. I know we've seen fun videos on Twitter and all of that of other teams releasing that starting quarterback. Don't get your hopes up. Mark Whipple did not do that. He deferred that question to Scott Frost, and we'll see if Frost is so inclined to go ahead and name somebody when we talk to him on Sunday for what will be our kind of Northwestern Week press conference. But Geoff, you were over there as well with Turner Corcoran, one of the offensive linemen today. Any big takeaways from what Turner had to say?
Yeah, so when you talk about the transition he made from guard to tackle, he said the main difference is that he's not a two-point stance anymore, and that was the main difference that he really took away, and you could tell that he really liked the way that Donovan Raiola is bringing it to the offensive line room and different schemes and stuff they're bringing up. So I think he's enjoying that aspect. What's also interesting is he talked about the cohesiveness of the group. He said if you go back to the winter time, he said the team would make fun of them a little bit just because of how much stuff they would do together, going to the weight room, eating together, everything. So you can tell based off the how ups and downs of last year really took a toll on them, and they're really taking that to heart this year and trying to build up that cohesiveness so it produces a good quality product on the field come Saturdays.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that of those guys being made fun of for that, because that was one of the very first things that Donovan Raiola told us, is that he wanted those guys to act as one. He did say that he wanted them to do everything, the very first time we talked to him. So apparently he's making them happy with that. Steve, you spent a little bit, the brief time with Donovan Raiola. Any takeaways from that or anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, so it was a pretty quick media session with Donovan Raiola. Not a big shocking.
He didn't want to give a lot away.
No, he never does, and that's fine. That's just how he is. He's not an interview coach, and that's totally fine. He can do it how he wants.
We've seen him in open practice. He
for
gets
sure
fired up.
There's a complete difference between when he's on the field and when he's in front of the media, and it's totally understandable. He can act how he wants. But yeah, he was throwing a lot of questions, good questions about offensive line, but he just wasn't getting into details, I guess. I asked him, we've heard a lot about Turner Corcoran making the change from left tackle to left guard, and I wanted to know kind of the intricacies of the details of what that's like for an offensive lineman to do. And he said, well, that's not in set stone. So he kind of killed the question there. And he didn't really answer it. But he said Teddy Prohaska, coming off that major knee injury last year against Michigan, said he's coming along just fine, and that's pretty much all he said. He was asked about Bryce Benhart over at right tackle, said he's coming along, and that's pretty much the only thing that he said. So, just a lot of, not much, I guess, from Donovan Raiola, but, we kind of expected that, I guess.
Yeah,
is what we're trying
that's
to say.
kind of expected at this point. But one of the other assistant coach that we heard from, Brian Applewhite, kind of the opposite of that situation. I was over with him quite a bit, and Brian was really good about the expectations of the running backs and what he's looking for them. Physicality and consistency, definitely the two things. He talked about the 3 kind of pillars of what they have to do and get adjusted to as a running back at Nebraska. It's not just rushing the football, but also catching passes and blocking, protecting for your quarterback as well. He talked specifically about A.J. Allen having to make that adjustment, going from, on third down and whatever, they were giving the ball to A.J. Allen, to go make a play and make something happen. And now he has to get used to being a guy that helps out in pass protection. For what it's worth, he said he was picking that up really well. The same thing with Emmett Johnson, another freshman. But Applewhite did not go into who was leading the pack at running back, but he did say that the top group has emerged and it has solidified itself, which is something that we have kind of been hearing here at Inside Nebraska, right? Is we're hearing that, Anthony Grant, Gabe Irvin Jr., and then Ramir Johnson, that trio has kind of separated itself. And speaking of Ramir Johnson, you talked to Ramir, who's got a new title, right?
Yeah, he said, call me a wide back. So, Ramir Johnson came to Nebraska as a running back, did really well under the circumstances last year at running back, but this fall he's been transitioning into more of a receiver role. And he said that's called me a wide back. So, if you're at Nebraska and you're doing a little bit of running back and slot receiver, you're going to be called a wide back. So, and we talked to him about that transition and route running. He said he's a quick learner, and playing under a position coach like Mickey Joseph. He's going to teach you something, one or two things about being a receiver, and he says he's a quick learner, so I think that's going well. And he also said, I asked him, if he's making this transition, has he watched any former players, any professional players who have kind of had the similar road that he has, playing a little bit of running back, playing a little bit of slot receiver, and he said former West Virginia star Tavon Austin, and he said, it's a really good one to watch, and also two former Oregon Ducks with Byron Marshall and D'Anthony Thomas. So those are really obviously good ones to watch too. So those are two kind of interesting things that Ramir said today.
Yeah, one of the other things that continue to strike me about Ramir when either other coaches talk about him or when he gets up there himself is his role of kind of being a wider leader within the team, willing to jump in there and do everything. I know he was asked too. I was over there for when he was asked about special teams and his role about just kind of jumping in there as well. And he said he'd do anything to help the team. Brian Applewhite, I asked him about the value of Ramir's leadership in that room. And he said it's really great to have someone that's been around, been there, done that can teach these younger guys what to do and what not to do. He's got a really interesting role on this team right now.
Good kid too. I think you kind of root for him. Guys that'll do anything to get on the field, even the non-publicity type stuff, whether it's
dirty work.
The dirty work, whether he's on the front line of the kickoff return unit or just doing something on punt return or punt team. It's kind of easy to root for Ramir Johnson.
Now, before we get out of here, Geoff, I feel like we've been bogarting this thing. We haven't talked to you since we talked to Turner about Turner. So anything else stand out to you about today's post-practice availability?
Something that I noticed about Turner, obviously he's going back, like you mentioned, he's making that transition tackle to guard. He's still, to me, he's a little more leaner, a little more fit for an offensive lineman. That's something I noticed because walking up, he's in his full pads, full gear. So we got the full look, and I'm like, wow, he's not like small by any means, but he's a little slimmer, a little more fit. So I'm interested to see how that turns up once we roll around the Northwestern.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're getting close. We are almost close to kickoff, so you guys are going to want to make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel, head over to the website nebraska.rivals.com. Make sure you subscribe. We'll have continued good coverage of everything going on with Nebraska athletics right now, and we will catch you next time.